Donald Trump seized the moment and used his executive power. Before the election, the stock market will keep growing and set new price records. It's extremely risky to prop up the markets artificially for another 4 years. It's much easier to let them fall. Welcome to the Coin Post. If you were wondering what America would be like and what would happen to the stock market after Donald Trump loses the election on November 3rd, you shouldn't have. After all, with only a couple of orders signed right in time, Trump managed to get back into the campaign, and now Joe Biden's victory seems far from obvious. Today I suggest talking about what will happen to the American stock in the next months in the light of the political and economic situation in the US, because this is the market that sets the trends for the rest of the world. Join the best community on YouTube, subscribe to the channel right now. Let's get into it. There's a good saying, a stitch in time saves 9, and apparently Donald Trump understands the meaning of the proverb. Since the beginning of the summer, Trump's support has rapidly dropped, and political scientists started saying Joe Biden was likely to enter the White House triumphantly after the fall elections. There were mainly two reasons for this. First, Trump's desire to quickly open up the economy led to the failure of the quarantine measures, and now the US has the most COVID-19 cases. And number two is the protests of the Black Lives Matter movement, which started in the late May and continues to this day. It's just it hasn't been widely discussed lately. I once gave a detailed explanation about the protests in the US, and I said that they wouldn't have been so massive had it not been for the millions of unemployed Americans relying on benefits. And here comes August, and the most important thing about this month is that they cut off the $600 a week for every unemployed. Congress wanted to extend this, but the Republicans and Democrats couldn't agree on the size of the second aid package, so the payments stopped coming and people never got a job. For many people, benefits were higher than salaries, and people didn't want to get back to work, where they would have to work hard but earn less for it than just sitting at home. And that's when Donald Trump seized the moment and used his executive power and signed the executive order that would extend unemployment benefits and impose a payroll tax holiday. He made it look like the greedy Democrats didn't want to take care of the people and therefore didn't pass through Congress a decision on a second aid package, while the current president from the Republican Party always thinks of the people first. It should be noted that it was Donald Trump who had previously advocated the abolition of unemployment benefits and wanted to replace them with a back-to-work bonus. But now that the political situation has changed, he's completely changed his mind. However, the benefits now amount to only $300 from the federal budget and $100 each from the local government. Still, it's better than nothing, so Trump's a hero again. Besides, he temporarily imposed the payroll tax holiday for those who earn less than $100,000 a year. The grace period will last until the November 3rd, and now President Trump pledged to pursue a permanent cut to the payroll taxes that fund Social Security and Medicare if he is re-elected. So this is one fascinating argument that is affecting people's greed, and new polls show that it works pretty well. Another Donald Trump's campaign promise, which some may find especially important, is the stock market growth. Trump has tried to scare people by claims that if his rival Joe Biden wins, the market will literally collapse immediately after. Such claims mean that Biden might raise dividend taxes as well as profits from selling securities. In turn, Donald Trump promises that even before the election, the stock market will keep growing and set new price records. And you have to understand that the next thing he's gonna do is he's gonna promise to keep the market going by putting pressure on the Fed to keep it moving up. In fact, there's no great threat of market collapse once Biden comes to power, because it's not advantageous to him, especially in the face of the pandemic raging in the country. Also, Trump's words about future growth are of course tempting, but what can he really do about it? Benefit payments have plummeted, so if the so-called American unemployed bought shares from April to July, they would now get almost half the money. At the same time, it's impossible to get more money out of Federal Reserve, the interest rate is already zero, and they refuse to go even lower into the negative zone. However, Donald Trump promised the stock price increase until at least November 3rd. Do you think he will keep that promise or not? Share in the comments. And now, let's imagine that the elections are over. Trump keeps his presidency, so is the stock market gonna keep growing after that? In my view, not necessarily, for several reasons. Firstly, the US crises have happened before, and none of the incumbent presidents wanted it. But markets collapsed anyway, just because they can't grow forever. I gotta give it to Trump, he proved to be an exceptionally active crisis manager. And I specifically used the word active instead of productive. The rapid stock price recovery is to do with his actions against the Fed and Congress in many ways. On the other hand, stock prices have recovered, but the economy is in a deplorable state, and the Fed doesn't have more incentives to affect the situation. And to somehow make ends meet, the US Treasury is planning to borrow $4.5 trillion by the end of 2020. Secondly, with Trump winning the presidential election, he will lose motivation to prop up the market. Donald wanted to postpone the elections until they beat the coronavirus, but this prompted widespread criticism, and he quickly took back what he said. And even assuming that Trump, as a member of the Republican Party, has to do everything in his power to make sure next president is his fellow party member, it's extremely risky to prop up the markets artificially for another 4 years. It's much easier to let them fall and blame the same Democrats or China, and then try to make yourself look good as a savior of the situation. Or just expect people to forget everything within the next 4 years until the next elections. Before the closing argument, I'll take a short pause and remind you that each subscription to the channel means the world to me. Thank you for your support, and we keep going. Thirdly, Trump is a highly incoherent politician, and to put it more accurately, he's always cunning and turning the situation upside down, changing his mind momentarily. The trade wars with China often end up with trade agreements. Donald claims victory and then starts imposing new restrictions and claims to be completely unhappy with earlier agreements. At the same time, while actively antagonizing China, he's gradually losing the US position in the international arena, about which we have a video on the channel. You can find the link in the description box. Assuming that the rumors of Trump's collusion with China are right, the Celestial Empire then is just putting up with his games as a means to win the next elections. It makes sense to say that the US has promised to limit its interference in Asia and Eastern Europe, which China considers its zone of influence. Moreover, it might also affect the popularity of the US dollar as the world reserve currency, as China has been promoting transactions in yuan with its partner countries. To sum up, obviously Donald Trump keeps his promises as long as it's in his best interest, so things like new benefits, tax holidays, and high-priced stocks could come to an end anytime Trump loses interest in the matter. I'm looking forward to reading your comments. Do you think the stock market will collapse after the US presidential election? That's it for today. Thanks for watching. It's the CoinPulse channel. Subscribe and get enlightened.